The Paris Catacombs, a sprawling, underground labyrinth, holding the remains of over 6 million people. It's a place steeped in history, darkness, and countless tales of the unexplained. But what if the spirits of this subterranean city of the dead do want to always stay within its bony walls? Tonight, we're exploring a chilling account of a haunting that took place not in the catacombs, but just above them, in the very streets of Paris. Our story begins with a young American filmmaker named Thomas, who came to Paris in the early 2000s to work on a documentary about the city's hidden history. He rented a small, charming apartment in the 14th arrondissement, a district known for its quiet streets, quaint cafes, and its direct proximity to the main entrance of the catacombs. Thomas was thrilled. The location was perfect for his research. He had no idea he was about to become part of a story far more terrifying than any he planned to film. For the first few weeks, everything was normal. Thomas spent his days poring over historical documents and his evenings exploring the neighborhood. He often took late-night walks, fascinated by how the bustling city transformed into a silent, almost eerie landscape after midnight. It was during one of these walks that he had his first unsettling experience. He was heading back to his apartment around 2 a.m. The streets were completely deserted, cloaked in the orange glow of the streetlights. As he turned onto his street, he heard a faint sound. It was a soft, rhythmic tapping. He stopped, listening intently. Tap, tap, tap. It sounded like a walking cane on the cobblestones. He looked up and down the street, but saw no one. Thinking it was just an echo from a nearby building, he shrugged it off and continued home. But the tapping sound followed him, always seeming to be just a few paces behind. The moment he reached his front door and fumbled for his keys, the tapping stopped. The silence that followed was somehow more deafening than the sound itself. Over the next few nights, the tapping became a regular occurrence on his late-night returns. It was always the same, a steady, rhythmic tap that would start when he turned onto his street and stop the second he reached his door. He tried to rationalize it. Old pipes. A loose shutter, but the sound was too distinct, too deliberate. It was the sound of something or someone walking. He started taking different routes home, but it made no difference. The tapping would always find him on that final stretch. The strange occurrences soon moved from the street into his apartment building. One evening, he was climbing the winding staircase to his 4th-floor flat when he heard footsteps descending from the floor above him. He paused, expecting to see a neighbor, but the footsteps stopped just around the bend of the staircase, 1 floor up. He waited, but no one appeared. "Hello?" Ekadid, out his voice echoing in the silent stairwell. No response. He cautiously continued up the stairs. As he passed the 3rd-floor landing, a wave of intense cold washed over him, so cold it made him gasp. It lasted only a second. 10 bunnies set. The air on the landing was still and empty. Inside his apartment, things escalated. Objects would move on their own. A book he left on the table would be on the floor. Keys he placed by the door would be found in the kitchen. At first, he blamed his own forgetfulness, the stress of his project, but it was becoming too frequent, too strange to ignore. The feeling of being watched was constant. He'd be working at his desk and feel a presence standing right behind him, the hair on his neck standing on end. He'd turn around, and of course, nothing was there. The turning point came one Tuesday night. Thomas was working late, editing some footage he'd shot earlier that day. The only light in the room came from his computer screen. Suddenly, he heard a faint scratching sound coming from the corner of the room. He muted his audio and listened. Scratch, scratch, scratch. It was the sound of a fingernail dragging slowly across the old, wooden floorboards. His heart hammered against his ribs. He slowly turned his head towards the sound. The corner was deep in shadow, but he could just make out a dark shape huddled there. It looked like a person, hunched over, unnaturally still. He couldn't see a face, just a silhouette against the deeper darkness. He froze, unable to move or speak. The scratching stopped. The figure, slowly, jerkily, began to rise. It was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs moving at odd angles like a broken marionette. As it straightened up, it turned its head towards him. There were no features, no eyes, no mouth. Just a smooth, pale void. Thomas let out a scream he didn't recognize as his own, scrambling backwards, knocking over his chair. He fumbled for the light switch, his hands shaking violently. He flicked it on, flooding the room with light. The corner was empty. There was nothing there. He didn't sleep in the apartment that night. He grabbed his wallet and keys and ran, spending the night walking the streets of Paris until sunrise, too terrified to be alone in the dark. The next day, he started digging into the history of his building. What he found chilled him to the bone. The apartment building had been constructed in the late 18th century. Around the same time, the city began moving remains from overflowing cemeteries into the catacombs. His building, like many in the area, was built directly over a network of old quarry tunnels that were later incorporated into the catacomb system. He spoke to the building's concierge, an elderly woman who had lived there her entire life. At first, she was hesitant to talk, but when Thomas described the tap and cane, the cold spots, and the shadowy figure, her face grew pale. She told him that for generations, residents had reported strange happenings. The most persistent story was of the inspector. Legend said that during the massive, chaotic transfer of bones to the catacombs, one of the inspectors overseeing the work, a man known for his grim dedication, vanished without a trace. Some believed he got lost in the labyrinth and perished. Others whispered that he became something else, a guardian of the tunnels, whose spirit restlessly wanders the streets and buildings, directly above his subterranean domain, forever tapping his cane, forever checking on his silent kingdom. The concierge told Thomas that the spirit was usually harmless, a fleeting presence. But sometimes, when someone becomes too interested in the world below, like Thomas with his documentary, the inspector takes a more personal interest. The scratching, he heard. She said old Thales described it as the inspector trying to claw his way through the floors to get back to the tunnels below. Thomas was a rational man, a documentarian who dealt in facts, but he couldn't deny what he had experienced. The combination of the historical records and the concierge's story was too much to dismiss. He realized he wasn't just living near a historical site. He was living on top of it. The boundary between his world and the city of the dead below was thinner than he could have ever imagined. He broke his lease the next day. He finished his documentary from a new apartment on the other side of the city, never once returning to the 14th arrondissement after dark. To this day, Thomas says he can't hear a rhythmic tapping sound without a shiver running down his spine. His story is a chilling reminder that in a city as old as Paris, the past is never truly buried. Sometimes, it's just beneath your feet, waiting for you to listen. The millions of souls resting in the catacombs are silent, but perhaps, just perhaps, their guardians are not. What do you think? Was it just an overactive imagination fueled by the creepy history of the area? Or did Thomas truly encounter the restless spirit of the catacombs' lost inspector? The next time you walk the beautiful streets of Paris, listen closely. You might hear more than just your own footsteps. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more explorations into the unknown. Stay safe out there.